Imagine yourself lying in the silence of the night, your body beginning to feel light, your breathing slow and steady, your eyes heavy as they resist staying open. This is not only about sleep, but about a calm journey into another world. A world that exists between reality and imagination. A world that can carry us back thousands of years into an age long gone. Here, there is no rush. We simply follow the slow rhythm of time. It's like drops of water falling onto the surface of ice, forming quiet ripples. Along with it, we will try to open a forgotten page, a page about the great beasts that once roamed the earth, predators that ruled the Ice Age creatures. Now, surviving only in bone and paintings, on cave walls, and in the faint whispers of an incomplete history. There is no pressure to understand this all at once. Just let these words flow gently, guiding your thoughts into a corridor of time, and if you feel sleep coming, let it, for this story does not demand answers. It only accompanies you on the long path to deep rest. There is something soothing when we speak of a past so distant. The span of thousands of years makes everything feel like a dream. We can imagine cave lions walking across the snow, giant wolves howling in the endless frozen night, or shadows of immense size moving behind pine forests wrapped in ice. Yet all of this feels safe now, because they are gone. We remain only as distant observers, as if sitting at the edge of a vast screen playing scenes from a vanished world. We do not need to feel fear, because the distance of time itself is a gentle shield, and this tale is here only to draw us in, not to unsettle our hearts. When you listen quietly, it feels as if faint echoes from the past begin to surface. The echoes are not loud voices, but small whispers that invite us closer. We do not truly know what happened to those great creatures, why they disappeared, why their final roars sank beneath the weight of ice. But precisely because we do not know, the mystery feels beautiful. Mystery is a part of any good bedtime story, for it never forces us to discover an answer. It simply leaves a door half open, just enough to let imagination keep wandering, even when eyes are already closed. So at the beginning of this journey, let us sit quietly. Imagine a thin mist drifting across an icy plain. Imagine the pale light of the moon shining on great footprints in the snow. And imagine the stillness of the world when the last of the great predators exhaled its final breath. That stillness is not frightening. It welcomes peace. It is like an empty space waiting to be filled with our own dreams. And that is where this story will flow. Slowly, gently, with no need for haste. Now take a slow breath. Let the cool night air wash your chest. Then release it gently, as though all burdens flow away with it. Nothing is urgent for you tonight. Nothing demands you to stay awake. There is only time moving slowly, time you may fill with a story that never truly ends, a story that can guide you gradually into deep sleep. Imagine your body growing lighter, like ice slowly melting under the sun. Your mind may still wander, but let it drift. Do not restrain it, like a small stream that eventually finds its own path. The tale we will explore tonight is not only about the great predators of the Ice Age, but also about silence, about how the world changes, about how something once so mighty can vanish without a sound. Let your ears receive the rhythm of these words as if they were the repeating waves on a quiet shore. Nothing here needs to be remembered. No fact needs to be recorded. For all of this is merely a soothing cadence, enough to bring ease to your mind. If your eyes grow heavier, that is a good sign. It means your body is ready to sink into the calm tide of sleep. And if, instead, you remain awake, do not worry, for this story will continue, just like the endless night of the frozen lands. There is no need to follow every detail, for even in your dreams, the tale will continue to echo, weaving itself into your slumber. We will move slowly, step by step, deeper into the world buried beneath ice. We will see cave lions, giant wolves, and other predators that once ruled the cold earth. But tonight, they do not appear to terrify or to frighten, but to be retold in a gentle tone, as if they were faint shadows within mist, appearing briefly, then fading away. In this way, you can feel safe, for time itself has placed them far away, turning them into memories, and those memories into a long lullaby. So now, let your eyes grow heavier. Let your voice fall silent. Let your body find its most comfortable place, as though you were lying on a frozen meadow, staring at the ancient stars glittering in the dark sky. Those stars are as old as the creatures we are about to speak of, stars that bore witness to their final roars. By remembering this, we may feel both small and at peace. For whatever is lost, whatever lies buried, all of it is only part of the unstoppable flow of time. And tonight, you need only one thing. Allow yourself to drift. Drift with the story that flows. Drift with the mystery that need not be solved. Drift with the tender silence. In the end, this tale is not only about the past, but also about your sleep tonight. Around 20,000 years ago, the world was held in the grip of the Ice Age. Vast stretches of land that we now call Europe, Asia, and North America were covered in ice sheets, hundreds of meters thick. The seas receded, new lands emerged, and cold winds blew endlessly, carrying silent flakes of snow. Nights stretched longer, and the brief daylight offered only a dim glow, as though the earth were wrapped in eternal twilight. Across those frozen plains, mighty creatures roamed. Cave lions, larger than modern lions, with thick fur and powerful muscles, hunted in small groups across valleys covered in snow. Giant wolves, whose forms we now know only from fossils, pierced the mist with long howls that echoed against icy cliffs. Life in that time appeared harsh, yet also beautiful, for nature was balanced in its own mysterious way. Imagine a vast valley in Eastern Europe, where towering pine forests rose above frozen ground. A river flowed slowly, partially encased in ice, and along its banks, deep tracks marked the fresh snow. Perhaps they belonged to a mammoth searching for food, or perhaps to a predator stalking it. We will never know for certain, for those tracks are now preserved only in frozen earth. Yet imagining them makes us feel as though we were walking there, silent witnesses to a stage of nature that was quiet but full of life. There were no cities, no artificial lights, no sounds of engines, only the glow of the moon, countless stars in the sky, and the heavy breath of great beasts turning into white mist in the night air. The cracking of ice, the hiss of wind, and the distant roar of avalanches served as the natural backdrop to life. For humans who lived then, the world was not merely a home, but a realm of mystery, filled with threats as well as wonders. They lit fires in caves, painted animals on the walls in red and black pigments, perhaps as acts of reverence, or perhaps as a way to preserve memory. Each line in those paintings is a small window, offering us glimpses of a world now long buried. That environment created a reality difficult for us to imagine now. The cold pierced the bone, yet life endured. The great animals were not merely rulers, but parts of a fragile chain of existence. They hunted, they survived, and eventually they vanished. It is this mystery that guides us tonight as we follow the traces left behind, soothing our thoughts with stories we can no longer witness directly, but can still feel within our imagination. When we speak of the world at the height of the Ice Age, we speak of a landscape alien to our imagination today. Picture lands stretching endlessly, covered with snow and glaciers, beneath a pale sky where the sun rarely showed its face. The average temperature was so low that every breath of man or beast hung as mist, and every footprint lingered long before being covered once again by new snow. In such conditions, early humans struggled to survive with simple tools crafted from stone, bone, and wood. They hunted not only to live, but also competed against predators far greater, stronger, and faster. The cave lion, with sharp fangs and muscular build, was a constant threat lurking behind pine forests. While packs of dire wolves could overwhelm small human camps in a single night. This was not merely a cold world, but one steeped in uncertainty. Yet within that uncertainty lay a beauty difficult to describe. Imagine a long night illuminated by a fire at the mouth of a cave. The red light dancing upon stone walls, while far beyond, the eyes of predators glimmered in the moonlight. Early humans may have sat in circles, telling stories of the creatures they saw, of hunts that succeeded, or of unequal battles with giant beasts. These stories may have been told in quiet voices, like prayers, or drawn with hands, leaving marks on stone walls, which thousands of years later we can still see. All of this gives us a faint glimpse that their world was not only harsh, but filled with meaning, for every animal that appeared before them could mean life or death. The great predators lived alongside humans, not in harmony, but in constant tension. Sometimes humans triumphed against a cave lion with nothing more than spears, while at other times they had to abandon their camp when wolves approached in numbers. In fossil records, we can see marks on bones, signs of countless battles. But what we cannot see is the fear, the respect, and perhaps the awe that arose each time humans beheld those creatures, that we can only imagine, and in such imagining, we too feel the mystery that wrapped the long nights of the Ice Age, and above it all, there was an eternal silence. No roar of engines, no hum of cities, only the pure voice of nature echoing through boundless stillness. This was the world that held secrets, the world we are beginning to touch once more tonight. There is one thing that always surrounds any conversation about the Ice Age, a faint sense that is difficult to explain. We see fossils, we read marks on bones, we study layers of ice and permafrost. Yet all of it only gives us fragments of a world far larger, Imagine early humans walking among glaciers, rising like colossal walls, beneath a sky that felt heavier than the one we know now. Imagine, too, their slow but cautious steps, for around every bend a predator might wait, not merely to defend its territory, but to hunt, to survive, just as the humans themselves did. In that cold and harsh world, every creature was forced to live within a fragile balance, a balance that could shatter at any moment by a failed hunt or a winter that lasted too long. If we imagine further, there is a silence binding the entire landscape. Silence not as emptiness, but silence filled with subtle sounds, like the whisper of wind threading through cracks of ice, or the soft sliding of snow falling from a branch. The humans who lived then may have been attuned to these small noises, sounds that to us seem insignificant, but to them were signs of life or danger. A bird suddenly taking flight from a bush could mean a predator nearby. The howl of wolves in the distance could be a sign of a pack on the move. All those little signs became a quiet language, one that could only be understood by those who lived in a world always at the edge of uncertainty. Yet behind all the harshness, we cannot dismiss the possibility that early humans also felt wonder. Perhaps they stood on the shore of a frozen lake, gazing at stars far brighter than those we see now, and felt something greater than mere hunting and survival. Perhaps they watched a mammoth walking in the distance and felt a profound reverence, not only for its size, but because the mammoth symbolized endurance and strength in a relentless world. We never truly know what they thought, but we can sense traces of it in the artifacts they left behind. In cave paintings that we can still witness, in carved fragments of bone shaped with care. All of it is a faint whisper from a world that has vanished, yet still waits to be heard again. And tonight, in our long journey through the tale of the great Ice Age predators, we will let that whisper seep slowly into us. We will not rush to find answers, for perhaps the answers never truly existed. What exists are shadows, echoes, and mysteries drifting within the snow, lingering still in timeless silence. Imagine a morning far back in the Ice Age, when the sun never truly rose in the brightness we know today. The light was more like a pale shimmer spread thinly behind a veil of cold mist, as if the world had only been given half of the daylight it should have had. In a valley surrounded by towering glaciers, a group of early humans awoke from their brief rest. The small fire they had guarded through the night was already dimming, leaving behind a fragile layer of ash drifting with the wind. 1 or 2 rows earlier to reignite sparks, for without fire there was no life. Fire was the only protection from the biting cold, and also from the eyes of beasts that might lurk in the dark. That fragile warmth was the thin line between life and death, and people of that age knew exactly how delicate that line was. Around them, a forest of conifers stood in silence. The needle leaves bore a thin layer of snow that slowly drifted downward. The air was crystal clear, yet carried a dryness that scraped at the throat. They had no clocks or precise measure of time, but they read the world as if it were an open book. The pale sun's position on the horizon, the direction of the wind, even the faintest track in the snow were signs. A skilled hunter could tell if a wolf had passed in the night just by the depth of a claw mark. They knew when mammoths shifted their migratory path from the way branches were broken or grasses pressed down. Their daily life was built on reading subtle cues, things that to us might seem trivial, but to them were the very keys to survival. Yet there was another side seldom spoken of, a darker side. Not every day ended with a successful hunt. There were times when the last scraps of meat were gone, and snow still fell with no sign of ceasing. Children cried from hunger, while adults stared blankly, realizing they might not endure until the next season. In such times, humans could become shadows of themselves. There are faint stories whispered by archaeologists about human bones bearing the cuts of stone knives. Marks that raise the question of whether in unbearable hunger they may have turned to one another. No one can say for sure, and we will never truly know. Yet the shadow of that possibility always lingers, clinging to our imagination when we think of the harsh world they inhabited. Beyond the ring of fire, wildlife moved with its own rhythm. A cave lion might be watching from afar, its eyes glimmering faintly in the twilight, waiting for its chance. Dire wolves ran across the snowy plains, leaving long trails soon erased by wind. Carrion birds circled above, driven by an instinct sharp enough to sense weakness. For in that world, weakness was an invitation to death. Every creature had its place, and every small mistake could mean the end of a lineage. For early humans, life was not a tale of heroism, but a story of survival from day to day in a world where ice and beasts held sway. And if we sit quietly tonight, imagining that frozen morning, we may feel the slow pulse of a world now gone. A world where humans were not yet rulers, but simply one of many creatures trying to endure within a fragile balance. That world is layered with mysteries, and each layer can only be touched through shadows, through fossils, through whispers of a story that was never complete. Days in the Ice Age were not long or beautiful like the summers we imagine from familiar stories. Time seemed to slow down among the frozen mists and snow that blanketed the vast land. Each morning, early humans had to make simple yet crucial decisions: whether to go out hunting, search for roots hidden beneath the frozen soil, or remain close to the fire while waiting for slightly kinder weather. Hunts were never certain. A group might follow mammoth tracks for days, only to discover the herd had already moved far away, leaving behind frozen, empty steppes. Sometimes they managed to bring down a great deer or wild horse, and the meat could last for days, though always with the danger of other predators catching the scent of blood from afar. Cave lions, far larger than modern lions, walked slowly along the forest's edge. They were never in a hurry, for they knew that every hungry creature would eventually make a mistake. Dire wolves moved in packs, their eyes glowing in the dim twilight. Findings of bones marked with wolf bites suggest that they were not merely hunting rivals, but predators who at times considered humans part of the food chain. Humans in that era may have slept with unease, for the howling of wolves in the distance was not just a background to the night, but a real threat that could draw closer at any time. Yet humans had something no other predator possessed. They had fire, they had simple tools, and they had the ability to work together. In small circles, they shared meat, divided tasks, and cared for children too weak to travel far. Women might gather roots or dried berries that lingered in the forest, while the men prepared stone-tipped spears, sharpening their edges with patience. Every small object they held was the result of long, repeated effort, never something gained easily. The stones chosen for spears were not random. They had to be hard, sharp, and light enough to throw. Each decision was born from generations of observation, and within those simple objects lay the traces of intelligence that steadily grew. Even so, daily life was haunted by loss. There were times when a hunter did not return, and the group could only wait, hoping to see his figure emerge from the mist. Sometimes he never returned, leaving only a broken spear or faint bloodstains in the snow. In such a harsh world, grief was not always shown with tears, for energy was too precious to release. Sorrow became something silent. I lay a vacant stare into the fire, only a long silence in the cold night. We can only imagine how deeply that loss marked them, how they accepted that life and death were but two sides of the same path. A path lined with snow, darkness, and the whispers of predators never far away. If we imagine that scene calmly, we can feel how thin the distance was between success and failure, how fragile the balance was, and how easily it could collapse. And in the stillness of tonight, it is as though we hear once more the faint crunch of footsteps in snow, the rising scent of wood smoke, and the gaze of early humans who always waited for something to emerge from the dark. There was no certainty, no comfort, only persistence repeated day after day in a world that never offered guarantees. Around the small fire, the life of early humans formed a circle that was simple yet deeply meaningful. The fire was not only a source of warmth, but also the center of all activity. Children huddled close, feeling the rare heat that the cold air never gave. Adults chewed slowly on the remnants of roasted meat, speaking little, for words seemed wasteful in the long night. Only the occasional crackle of wood could be heard, blending with the wind passing through the forest gaps. This circle of fire was a fragile fortress, a thin boundary separating humans from the vast world filled with predators. Its yellow glow reflected on their faces, showing lines of fatigue, hollow eyes, and scars that were part of daily existence. In that silence, no one truly slept deeply, for their ears remained alert, waiting for foreign sounds that might mean danger. Not far away, the wild world continued in a rhythm beyond human control. A cave hyena might be sniffing the discarded bones left outside the fire's circle, while an owl drifted silently overhead, its eyes gleaming as it searched for small movements beneath the snow. Sometimes the eyes of a cave lion could be seen glowing in the distance, like two quiet flames watching from the dark. They did not always attack, for they knew humans were not easy prey. But their presence was a reminder that the boundary between humans and predators stretched only as far as the firelight. Beyond that, there was no promise of safety. The relationship between humans and predators in that age was not only rivalry, but also a kind of silent recognition. Humans respected those animals, perhaps with deep fear, perhaps with faint admiration. It is possible that every encounter with a cave lion or direwolf was interpreted not merely as a threat, but also as a sign, something that gave meaning to their lives. Archaeological evidence shows carvings on bones and stones depicting the shapes of large animals. Perhaps these were not merely records of hunts, but prayers, or ways to connect with powers they saw as greater than themselves. Yet unease never vanished. Imagine the long night when the howling of wolves drew nearer, echoing between icy cliffs. Children clutched tighter at their mothers, while hunters gripped their spears, even though they knew stone-tipped weapons were not always enough against a hungry pack. In those moments, time seemed to slow. Every second was spent waiting for something to emerge from the darkness, something that might never come, but whose shadow was enough to make bodies tremble. The tension did not always end in attack, sometimes only with a slow arrival of dawn, with the pale sun reappearing on the horizon. But the fear lingered, becoming part of every day, part of every breath they took. If we were to sit by the fire tonight, imagining ourselves as part of that circle, we would sense that their world was full of thick silence. Silence that carried faint sounds of animals watching of wind, scraping against branches of snow, collapsing slowly. All of it formed a quiet music that served as the background to their lives. A music that never ceased, and within that rhythm, early humans learned to understand that they were only a small note in the vast symphony of nature. A symphony that never allowed room for weakness. It is possible that within the fire circle, in the midst of long nights, early humans did not merely sit in fear. They may have begun to form simple rituals, a way to calm their hearts and give meaning to what they could not control. Imagine an old hunter lifting a large bone, already polished, and scratching simple lines across it. These lines were not mere marks, but representations of the cave lion he once saw from afar. Or perhaps the dire wolf that crossed their path while they searched for wild berries. The carving was not created with complex aesthetic intent, but as a reminder, or perhaps a prayer in visual form. They may have believed that by depicting the animal, they could forge a certain connection, an unspoken pact between humans and the wild. Such rituals could unfold in silence. Picture a scene where the fire begins to dim, leaving only faint red light. A young woman takes a flat stone and sprinkles ash over it, shaping forms that only she and her group could understand. Children watched with curiosity, as if witnessing something greater than mere play. They had no words to name it, but the act became part of their collective memory, a tradition slowly passed on. Perhaps this was where the idea of symbol was born, the notion that something could hold meaning beyond itself. Yet, not all rituals were hopeful. There was also a darker side. In certain caves, traces of red pigment have been found, marks that may not have been mere decoration. Some theories suggest that early humans used animal blood as part of their ceremonies, whether to ask for protection or to absorb the strength of the creatures they hunted. If so, their lives were filled with the awareness that every encounter with a predator was not only a matter of life and death, but also part of a larger circle of energy. A predator killed may never have truly disappeared, but lived again in the form of a symbol. In prayer, in memory passed down from generation to generation. These rituals were not luxuries, but necessities. In a world so harsh, where each day might be the last, humans needed a way to tie themselves to something greater than they were, Through ritual, they felt a little safer, though danger remained near. Through symbol, they gave meaning to fear, transforming it into something that could be told, not only something that made the body tremble in the dark. Perhaps rituals even helped them sleep, for by performing them, they believed some power was guarding their circle of fire. If we sat with them that night, we would see how fragile yet strong the world they built truly was. Fragile because nothing could truly shield them from a cave lion's attack at dawn. Strong because with imagination and symbol, they created an invisible layer of protection. The world of early humans was a place where harsh reality and imagination walked side by side, forming a faint balance, just enough to keep them alive. They did not know the word philosophy. They did not know religion in written form. But within the small rituals around the fire, they had already begun stitching the first threads of what would one day be called meaning. When the sun slowly rose above the horizon, early humans did not simply see light as the end of night. For them, daylight was opportunity, but also a new trial. Each morning was the beginning of an endless struggle, a cycle of life filled equally with anxiety and hope. They rose from their simple bedding of dry leaves or animal skins, their bodies still cold from the night's dew, but their steps soon carried them toward the forest or the open grasslands. In the daylight, they hunted, gathered fruits, dug for edible roots, or checked traps they may have set the day before. Every task was done with deep attention, for the smallest mistake could mean hunger or worse, death. Picture a young man carrying a simple spear tipped with sharpened stone, his eyes scanning the wide grassland ahead. He knew that behind the tall grass might be a large deer that could feed the whole group for days. But he also knew that within the same shadows, a cave lion might be waiting with patient stillness. Every step he took was a wager. Every movement of his body was silent communication with the wild world. In the distance, another woman might be gathering wild berries from bushes, children nearby playing with pebbles while keeping alert. From a young age, they learned that every snap of a branch, every whisper of the wind, could mean something worth serious attention. By day, the great predators rarely showed themselves, but their absence made humans even more uneasy. No one truly knew when the dire wolf would appear, or when the shadow of a cave lion would move between the trees. Within such uncertainty, humans learned to walk alongside fear. They developed simple systems of signs, perhaps small piles of stones or branches arranged as signals to others. If their traps were empty, they would read the ground for tracks, test the wind's direction, and try to interpret the faint signs left by animals. Every trace was not just a sign of life, but also a warning. The food they gathered was never enough for the long term. Fruits could rot, meat could spoil, roots could be depleted. That is why they kept moving, traveling from one place to another, following rivers, the movement of herds, or the turning of seasons. This nomadic life gave no space for long comfort. Each stop was temporary. Each fire burned only for a short while before being left behind. Yet amid the harshness, there were small moments of gentleness. A child might laugh upon finding a tiny insect. A mother might stroke her child's hair with rough but caring hands. In such small moments, humans found reasons to keep walking, even though the world around them was filled with threats. When the sun reached its peak, they usually sought shade, resting briefly and sharing what they had gathered. The shadow of trees became a temporary refuge, the sound of birds a soothing rhythm. But even while resting, their eyes stayed alert. A shadow could shift into movement. A whisper of wind could become unfamiliar footsteps. They never fully relaxed, for nature did not allow carelessness. Each day was a trial without end, each daylight a new chapter of the same long story. The daily life of early humans in daylight was a constant dance between need and fear, between courage and vigilance. They did not know that thousands of years later, people would look at their bones, their tools, and try to imagine their lives. To them, it was only life itself, simple, harsh, yet full of meanings that could never be put fully into words. In their steps upon damp earth, in the sweat that fell as they hunted, in the silent glances that carried signals, they had already created patterns the earth would remember. Those patterns still remain, even though their bodies have long been gone. As the sun began to sink toward the western horizon, early humans returned to their shelters carrying the results of the hunt, or sometimes only the disappointment of an empty day. Their steps were slow, bodies tired, yet their eyes remained alert to shadows moving nearby. They returned to the same place where the fire would be waiting, where children would watch with curiosity, and where the cold night wind began sweeping across the ground. The dusk brought a different color, the warmth of the fading sunlight blending with the chill of the approaching night. Every step was a journey back to a safe point they called home, though that home was merely a small circle of fire and animal skin tents. Women and children had already prepared some of the food that had been gathered, though a portion needed to be saved for the next night, where arranged the children divided tasks, and kept watch over the fire to ensure it stayed lit, despite the night wind trying to extinguish it. Occasionally, a soft whisper from a mother could be heard, whether to soothe a child or simply to speak to herself, as the human voice became a bond between life and the ever-present fear surrounding them. Beyond the circle of light, the wild world continued its motion, and humans understood that their presence was only temporary in a world larger and stronger than themselves. Dusk was a time for reflection. Hunters might sit sharpening spears or cleaning hunting tools, observing the tired faces of their companions, feeling the weight of the day that had just passed. They spoke little, for words seemed too weak to convey the experiences they had endured. Yet there was another form of communication, through glances, hand gestures, or the way they arranged meat and bones. Every action became a silent language understood by all group members, a method to maintain order and the fragile sense of security during the long night. At dusk, predator shadows also became more visible. The eyes of cave lions or dire wolves could sometimes be seen in the distance, gleaming in the last rays of sunlight. Their presence was not only a threat, but also a reminder of how thin the line between life and death could be. Yet, early humans seemed to accept this reality with remarkable calm. They had learned to walk between fear and necessity, balancing courage and caution, and finding ways to survive in a world of constant uncertainty. When night fully arrived, they sat together around the fire, sharing stories, though not all stories sounded heroic. Some were simple observations, animal tracks, wind direction, herd behaviors, or changes in weather. In each story lay unwritten knowledge, experience passed from day to day, from one generation to the next. The fire provided temporary security, yet shadows outside the circle remained. And humans learned to live with the awareness that they were always part of a larger natural world. Dusk and night taught patience and resilience. Their lives were simple routines, yet full of meaning. They learned to appreciate each moment, each hunt's yield, even each failure. In the quiet of night, as animal sounds softened, early humans found a rhythm that allowed them to adapt to a world that was not always welcoming. And around the fire, we can imagine them gazing at the darkening sky, feeling as though everything was connected. Predators, humans, stars, and the cold wind sweeping across the earth. The dark night brought a deeper silence. The circle of fire that had once been warm now struggled to maintain its light, while the shadows of trees and stones began to form strange shapes around the early humans. They knew that beyond the light, the wild world continued to move. Predators continued to stalk, and every misstep could mean the difference between life and death. Yet even so, fatigue gradually overcame their bodies. Eyes that had watched over the night since dawn grew heavy, and they slowly learned to balance the need for sleep with vigilance against threats. Sleep was never completely deep, but enough to restore a little strength so that the next day could be faced. In the middle of the night, the sounds of nature became more pronounced. The wind sweeping through the trees sounded like whispers that constantly reminded them that this world was alive and waited for no one. A light step or a snapping branch could raise a head, eyes scanning the darkness. A dire wolf might be adjusting its distance, seeking an opportunity, or merely observing from afar. Unseen but felt, their presence became part of the night itself. Even when humans closed their eyes for a moment, their senses continued to detect patterns of sound, scent, and vibration, giving clues about the presence of other creatures. The presence of predators was not always frightening in the sense of panic. A silent understanding emerged that humans were part of the same chain, part of a world larger than themselves. Every sound, every shadow, became a reminder of the reality they lived. In the stillness of night, they might imagine the journey of a cave lion through the forest, or a pack of wolves moving with trained strategy, reminding humans of the need to remain vigilant and to learn from experience. Predator shadows became invisible teachers, instructing patience, precision, and caution. At the same time, early humans found ways to face the night with calm. The circle of fire became a focal point, a place to gather, speak in low voices, or rearrange leftover food. Children learned to imitate adult movements, to place themselves safely, and to sense the rhythm of the night as it continued. In that silence, they learned that life was not always about victory over predators, but about adapting, reading signs, and surviving wisely. Every breath they took was part of a training to understand a world larger than themselves. The stillness of night also left space for imagination. In the flickering firelight, shapes cast on cave walls, or the ground could become different stories at any moment. An animal might appear larger, or a shadow seem to move like another unseen creature. That imagination was not merely play, but part of how they learned to understand their environment, creating patterns that aided survival. In those shadows, early humans discovered an awareness of the interconnectedness between themselves, nature, and the predators sharing the same space. As the night deepened, a sense of melancholy often arose. There was curiosity left unanswered, questions that could not be answered about the world beyond the fire circle. Did the cave lion watching from afar understand their existence? Did the dire wolf recognize human skill in reading nature's signs? All those questions remained suspended, never truly answered, yet gave profound meaning to everyday life. Within that uncertainty, early humans learned to live, to accept the world as it was, and to find tranquility while facing the ever-present mystery. As the night deepened and the moon began to show its face in the sky, its soft light touched the Earth's surface with a silver glow. Early humans often gazed at that light, not only as a natural illuminator, but also as a guide that directed their steps in the dark night. Shadows of trees illuminated by the moon moved slowly, forming patterns different from the firelight, and they learned to read those signs as information. Every broken branch, every track on damp ground, or the sound of nocturnal animals became a language to be interpreted calmly. They understood that night was not merely darkness, but also a natural communication system that allowed them to stay safe. The moon hanging in the sky also provided rhythm to their nocturnal life. Around the fire circle, human sounds merged with the wind, rustling leaves, and the footsteps of animals. That rhythm served as a reminder that life continued even when darkness covered everything. Children might fall asleep on their mother's laps, while hunters and other adults remained alert, eyes scanning the surroundings. The balance between calmness and vigilance was an art they learned through years of experience. Every night was a lesson in understanding the world, learning to predict predator movements, and keeping the group intact. The sounds of night were not always frightening. There were whispers that carried information, scents that gave clues, vibrations in the ground that warned of something large nearby. A wolf or cave lion moving in the distance might not be seen, but could be sensed through subtle natural patterns. Early humans learned to read these patterns with remarkable precision. They had no sophisticated tools, yet their senses were finely tuned to detect the smallest hint. Those patterns allowed them to position themselves, maintain distance, and anticipate the movements of other creatures. The moon also cast shadows that helped them move safely. Silver light on damp ground highlighted narrow paths, rocks, and protruding roots. Through years of experience, they learned to step quietly, minimizing the risk of detection by predators. They understood that every movement needed consideration, and every night was a lesson in patience and precision. In that silence, they realized that nature had its own language, and humans were merely part of a larger system. Moreover, moonlight offered space for reflection. They might sit for a moment, gazing at the sky, feeling a strange calm in the midst of a night full of uncertainty. Predator shadows and nocturnal sounds became part of an experience that connected them with nature. They learned to accept that not everything could be controlled, and that awareness and vigilance were the best protection they had. In the moonlight, they discovered rhythm, patterns, and connections that made the night feel alive and safe, yet full of mystery. As the night progressed, natural patterns and moonlight wove an ever-changing story. Animal tracks, wind sounds, and shimmering light created a dynamic, nocturnal landscape. Early humans learned to move with that rhythm, observing, adapting, and keeping their small circles safe. Amid the darkness, they understood that night was not merely the absence of light, but a world full of signs and opportunities. With every step, they learned to read the world with precision, balancing fear and curiosity, and finding their place in a vast and unpredictable nature. As early humans began to close their eyes around the fire circle, their bodies tired, their minds continued moving between the real world and the world of shadows. Sleep was never completely deep, became a gateway into a hazy dream realm, where the experiences of the day merged with fears and hopes buried deep in the subconscious. In the darkness of night, eyes closed, but the senses remained alert to sounds and movements around them. Here, they experienced the most subtle connection with nature and predators. Shadows in dreams seemed to extend the real world, showing animals they had seen or imagined, with behaviors sometimes strange and frightening, sometimes evoking only curiosity. Those dreams often formed patterns, as if the subconscious attempted to provide guidance for what might occur in the real world. A dire wolf appeared in a shadowy dream, and its steps felt too close, too real, as if warning humans to be more cautious the following day. At other times, a cave lion appeared more faintly, with slow movements and sounds barely heard, evoking both awe and caution. Dreams were not only entertainment or fear, but also subconscious training, a way for early humans to learn to interpret a complex and dangerous world. Even the children sleeping in their mothers' laps began experiencing their first dreams. Shadows from the fire and moonlight formed the shapes of animals, trees, or sounds they did not fully understand. Yet the experience helped them begin to understand their environment, developing fear, courage, and intuition that would guide them as they grew. Dreams became a blend of real experiences and imagination, observation of the day, and signs left by nature at night. In that hazy awareness, they learned that the world could not always be predicted, but every hint, however small, had significance. The predator shadows appearing in dreams were not always identical to physical threats. Sometimes they appeared as symbols of warning or reminders of the connection between humans and nature. Early humans learned to recognize these patterns, distinguishing between real danger and signals that only required attention, adjusting their behavior based on the information. Dreams became a bridge connecting physical experience, instinct, and cognitive abilities not yet fully developed. In this way, each night became mental training that helped them survive in a harsh and unpredictable world. In the darkness of night, the silence around the fire offered space for subconscious reflection. Faint sounds, moonlight penetrating gaps in tents or trees, and forest scents created a vivid dreamscape. Early humans might dream of chasing animals, running through grasslands, or hiding from predators, leaving deep impressions upon waking. Even if they did not fully understand the meaning of these dreams, their bodies and minds absorbed them, forming intuition useful in the real world. Night and dreams became part of a continuous learning cycle. Each subconscious experience added understanding of the environment, animals, and natural signs. Thus, sleep was not merely rest, but a subtle learning process, bridging the real world and the mysterious world, always surrounding early humans. In this state, early humans felt connected, not only to their group, but to the entire ecosystem, predators, and natural forces governing everyday life. As dawn approached, the night began to show a subtle yet significant shift. The fire circle, though still burning, began to lose some of its warmth, while the air became colder and more rigid. The sounds of the night changed, from whispers of wind and rustling leaves to more deliberate and rhythmic movements, signaling that predators were becoming more active as morning approached. Early humans who remained awake in the fire circle sensed this change, not with panicked fear, but with calm vigilance. They understood that the period just before morning light was one of the most critical times, when their ability to read natural signs was tested. In the distance, the usual nocturnal animal sounds began to fade, replaced by larger, more purposeful movements. A dire wolf might be approaching through the forest, moving almost silently, yet detectable through subtle vibrations in the ground or shifts in the air scent. Tree shadows under the moonlight created illusions of movement that sharpened human senses. Every gust of wind, every snapping branch became part of the night's language that needed careful interpretation. In this state, early humans learned to remain still, hold their breath, and observe every clue that could determine their safety. The pre-dawn shift also brought a certain psychological nuance. Physical fatigue blended with mental tension, making human senses more acute and imagination more vivid. Predator shadows in dreams, or real shadows around the fire, felt closer, more tangible, as if the night expanded the boundaries between reality and subconscious perception. In that stillness, early humans relied on past experiences, reading the signs left by animal tracks, wind direction, and the position of the moonlight to adjust their strategies. Every small movement became a meaningful decision, potentially decisive for survival. At the same time, the fire circle remained a safe anchor for the group. The sounds of sleeping children, the breath of adults, and the crackling of the fire created a soothing pattern, easing tension even as predators moved beyond the circle. Nightlife became a balance between calm and vigilance, between the temporary comfort of the fire and the unseen threats surrounding them. Early humans learned that the night could never be fully controlled, but it could be navigated with awareness, intuition, and caution. Dawn was a moment of quiet reflection for some members of the group. They gazed at the sky beginning to blush in the eastern horizon, marking the transition between darkness and light. Every change in sky color, every shifting shadow provided information about animal behavior and potential threats. With years of experience, they connected natural patterns to survival strategies, adjusted sleeping positions, and prepared for the activities that would come with the rising sun. In each transition, early humans felt a deep connection with nature, predators, and the unceasing cycle of time. As the pre-dawn grew nearer, the air carried the scent of damp earth and cold foliage. The distinct night sounds gradually gave way to morning noises, birds beginning to chirp, animals moving in the distance, and subtle rustlings marking new life. Early humans remained awake in their fire circle, learning to perceive these subtle shifts. Regulating their breath, and attuning their senses to the slowly changing world. Every second was a lesson. Every gust of wind provided information, and every shadow became a warning or a guide. In that awareness, they learned to survive, living in harmony with the rhythm of night and the inevitable arrival of dawn. As the first light touched the eastern horizon, early humans gradually began to move from their fire circle. Bodies fatigued from the night started adjusting to the more intense morning activities. Some members of the group began preparing hunting tools, checking spears, sharp stones, and nets to be used for chasing animals beginning to stir in the open plains. In the silence of the pre-dawn, their steps were slow but deliberate, each movement calculated to minimize noise and maintain group safety. They knew that predators still lurked, observing, and any careless step could attract unwanted attention. The morning was a critical time to map safe routes. Their sharpened senses read changes in light, wind direction, and the scent of damp earth to determine the best path toward grasslands or rivers. Animal tracks left from the night before were vital clues, providing information about the location of prey and predators. Over years of experience, early humans developed careful strategies, balancing courage with vigilance, the need to find food with the risks that lurked. Every step was an exercise in precision and patience, honing the intuition that became their primary tool for survival. Morning life was also marked by intense observation of nature, the changing light, dew clinging to leaves, and the distinctive smells of dawn became part of the language of nature that they continuously learned. They might gaze toward the mountains, predicting the movements of large animals, or read the signs left by predator packs overnight. All of this was done with a near ritualistic calm, without haste, because every decision had tangible consequences. In that full awareness, early humans built a deep connection with their environment, realizing that the world was alive, constantly in motion, and always demanding vigilance. Hunting preparations were not only physical, but also mental. They envisioned the paths to take, strategies to surround prey, and potential predator interference. In their minds, every possibility was considered. Where a cave lion might hide, along which trail a dire wolf could appear, and how to adjust movements to remain safe. This process was a continuous exercise in concentration, building critical thinking skills while staying attuned to natural intuition. Adolescents also learned from these observations, mimicking movements and absorbing understanding of the unwritten rhythm of nature. As dawn brightened, early humans began moving out from the fire circle toward the hunting grounds. Morning shadows lengthened, and the air carried the sounds of new life. Birds chirping, small animals moving, and leaves rustling, indicating that predators were still hidden. They moved with a rhythm adjusted to the surrounding world, utilizing the emerging light for orientation while remaining alert to unseen threats. In every step, they learned to read the world, combining the experience of the previous night, natural signs, and instincts honed over years. The morning also strengthened group bonds. Before fully beginning the hunt, some members shared information, devised strategies, and ensured that each individual knew their position and responsibilities. These discussions were conducted quietly, without excessive words, because observation and silence were more important than lengthy conversation. This cohesion formed the foundation of safety and efficiency, allowing the group to face natural challenges with subtle yet effective coordination. Thus, morning activities were not only about procuring food, but also about learning, cooperation, and survival, reliant on accuracy, patience, and vigilance. As early humans began moving into the open plains in the morning, every step became part of a carefully planned strategy. They moved with full awareness, observing animal movements and measuring distances, choosing positions that offered maximum advantage for hunting prey. The first shadows of dawn highlighted animal silhouettes, making them easier to track, but at the same time making their own movements more visible. The senses of early humans worked in full harmony, eyes following movements, ears catching faint sounds, and noses detecting scents that provided clues about the presence of animals and lurking predators. Every movement of prey became a signal that needed careful interpretation. A deer leaping or a bison crouching provided information about the position and condition of the herd. Meanwhile, hidden predators such as cave lions or dire wolves added a subtle layer of tension. A step that was too fast or a sound made incorrectly could turn the hunt into danger for humans. They learned to balance the need to pursue prey with vigilance against unseen threats, maintaining distance and using the terrain carefully. In this process, cooperation was key. Group members communicated through subtle signals, eye contact, or trained body movements, avoiding excessive noise that could attract predators. Strategies to encircle prey, guide animals along desired paths, and maintain safe positions at the edges or rear of the group were all executed with precise coordination. Every individual had a clear role, and the smallest mistake could endanger the entire group. Through years of experience, they built an intuitive understanding that made their movements align like the rhythm of nature itself. Encounters with prey also inspired awe and respect for nature. They studied animal behavior, predicted movements, and adjusted strategies according to each species' characteristics. Shadows, light, and animal movement became part of a constantly learned language, forming complex and subtle survival skills. Every successful hunt not only provided food, but also reinforced knowledge, instincts, and their connection to a vast and unpredictable world. Yet, threats were always present. The sound of hidden predator steps, sharp odors, or changes in prey behavior became subtle warnings. Early humans learned to read these signs without panic, using experience, instinct, and vigilance to assess risk. They understood that the night had taught lessons, and the pre-dawn demanded the same readiness. In every movement, there was awareness of life and death, and every decision carried real consequences. As the hunt continued, the terrain itself became part of the strategy. Trees, bushes, and land contours were used to conceal movements and position the group. The rising sun influenced shadows and light direction, which were used to mislead prey or maintain distance from predators. These skills developed through long experience, careful observation, and continual practice. Every morning was a lesson in harmony with nature, understanding risks, and the subtle yet critical art of survival. Morning activities also included teaching the younger generation. Older children followed adults, observing movements, positions, and hunting techniques. Without lengthy verbal instructions, they absorb knowledge through direct observation and participatory experience. In this way, survival skills, understanding predators, and intuition for reading nature were naturally passed from one generation to the next. Morning became a time of training, learning, and strengthening deep group bonds, forming a foundation for survival in an unpredictable world. Success or failure in the morning hunt had a profound effect on the mood of the early human group. When prey was successfully captured, there was a subtle sense of relief and pride. Not exaggerated, but sufficient to strengthen social bonds. Tired bodies felt warmth again from the collective energy arising from shared achievement. They did not cheer or shout, but through glances, slight smiles, and simple hand movements, satisfaction and acknowledgement were conveyed. Children observed this attentively, learning to evaluate group behavior, understanding the importance of cooperation, and feeling the calm that emerged when the group's mission succeeded. On the other hand, hunting failure brought awareness of risk and limits. There was disappointment, but also quiet reflection that led to learning. These failures became material for evaluation without lengthy words, forcing each individual to assess strategy, position, and reactions to changing situations. The previous night and that pre-dawn served as important references for understanding why prey escaped or predators approached faster than expected. In that calm atmosphere, early humans learned to accept uncertainty and adapt to an ever-changing reality, understanding that not every effort would yield results, but each experience remained valuable. These emotional reactions also influenced social interactions. Those who demonstrated calm and understanding became respected figures within the group, while those who were hurried or panicked often received gentle attention from more experienced members. This dynamic shaped a subtle social structure in which experience, intuition, and self-control were valued more than mere physical strength. Children observing learned to filter emotional responses, absorbing lessons about resilience, patience, and the ability to control fear. Success or failure was not only related to prey or predators, but also to the environment. Changes in light, wind direction, ground conditions, and surrounding sounds added complexity to decisions. Each individual learned to read these signals and adjust actions, realizing that the world could not always be controlled. Through this process, respect for nature and understanding of uncertainty deepened. The silence after the hunt was often filled with observation of the environment, brief signaling discussions, and reflections that built collective understanding. These emotional experiences shaped the subconscious narrative binding each member of the group. Success provided a sense of safety and confidence, while failure cultivated vigilance and caution. Children involved in hunting felt tension, excitement, and relief intensely yet calmly, absorbing life lessons through direct experience. This became ongoing training that honed their ability to stay focused, interpret natural signs, and adapt to sudden changes in their surroundings. Additionally, hunting success and failure influenced the distribution of food and resources. The human body required adequate energy, and successful prey became the primary source, while failure taught the limits and the need for careful planning. Throughout this process, solidarity was maintained. Food was shared according to need, and the experience of failure became stories that reinforced collective awareness of risks and survival strategies. As the day progressed, the emotional experience of that morning remained embedded in body and mind, shaping the way early humans read the world. They learned to manage feelings, interpret the body language of other group members, and absorb information from the ever-changing natural environment. Success and failure became part of a subtle rhythm of life, teaching resilience, perseverance, and the ability to remain calm amid the uncertainty that constantly surrounded them. In this way, a simple morning experience became a profound lesson about the relationship between humans, nature, predators, and each other. Amid morning activities, early humans occasionally encountered signs of nearby predators. Whether footprints, fur caught in bushes, or the sharp scent indicating the presence of cave lions or dire wolves. Such encounters did not always happen directly, but their presence was enough to heighten vigilance. They learned to observe carefully, assess the distance and direction of predator movement, and determine strategies to stay safe. Tension arose not from panic, but from full awareness that life and death were always close at hand, even when their prey still attracted the predator's attention. Early humans developed the ability to read predator behavior from a distance. Subtle leaf movements, cracks in the ground under footprints, or gentle breaths became crucial indicators. They observed when predators moved, when they rested, and when they might attack. In this observation, intuition born from experience became the primary instrument. Every group member understood that each step had to be calculated, and the right decision could save the entire group from danger. When predators became more visible, early humans adjusted their positions. They moved slowly towards safer spots, using trees, bushes, and terrain contours as natural cover. Sometimes they paused, held their breath, and waited for the predator to pass without making movements that could attract attention. In this situation, patience became key, and the ability to suppress instinctive reactions was tested. Carefully maintained silence became the main defense, as even the smallest sound could turn the interaction into a threat. Interactions with predators also provided lessons about animal behavior and habits. Large predators, such as cave lions, had certain rhythms, hunting times, resting periods, and ways of moving that could be predicted with careful observation. Dire wolves, with their cunning and group coordination, presented a different challenge. More mobile, less predictable, yet the traces of their pack remained valuable clues. Early humans learned to interpret these patterns, adjust strategies, and plan routes that minimized the risk of direct encounters, while still allowing them to obtain the prey necessary for survival. Such tension also affected social interaction within the group. More experienced members naturally became guides and leaders, showing safe paths and signaling when predators were too close. Younger members learned to follow, observe, and mimic proper movements, absorbing experience without lengthy words. This dynamic fostered respect, solidarity, and trust among members, as the safety of each individual depended on collective caution and experience. Furthermore, encounters with predators shaped profound emotional experiences. The tension felt was not mere fear, but an awareness of the interconnectedness between humans and nature. They learned to place themselves within a broader context, understanding that they were not the center of the world, but part of a vast and complex cycle of life. This awareness fostered respect for predators while sharpening survival instincts central to early human life. Through these observations, they also developed contingency strategies. If a predator approached, there were mapped retreat routes, safe shelter points, and silent communication tactics. All of this was practiced consistently and became part of the collective learning passed from generation to generation. In this way, interactions with predators were not only about danger, but also about deep understanding of the environment, real-life experience, and awareness of the resilience required to survive in an unpredictable world. When predators were still near the hunting grounds, early humans had to rely on well-planned group strategies and subtle coordination. Each member had a specific role. Some acted as scouts, assessing the direction and movements of predators. Others positioned themselves to encircle prey without attracting attention. And some guarded retreat paths to ensure safety if the situation became dangerous. Their movements were slow, almost silent, using every curve of the land, trees, and bushes as natural cover. Balancing approaching prey while avoiding predators became a guiding principle for every step. This coordination did not require long words. Hand signals, eye movements, or slight foot taps conveyed instructions. Each member observed the reactions of others and adjusted their steps to the rhythm of the group. Over years of experience, early humans developed a form of nonverbal language that allowed them to move as a single unit, minimizing the risk of predator encounters while increasing hunting success. This experience taught that collective caution was more important than individual courage, and that subtle coordination could determine life or death for the entire group. The surrounding terrain became part of the strategy. Small hills served as natural lookout points. Tall bushes provided hiding spots, and dense trees became shelters. Every change in wind direction or light was carefully analyzed. As the scent of prey or predators could disperse differently depending on conditions. Sensitivity to such details became a continuously honed skill, allowing early humans to read the world with a high degree of precision, while maintaining a safe distance from lurking predators. Hunting strategy also involved planning prey routes. The group tried to predict animal movements, estimating where prey would run, and positioned themselves at key points to efficiently intercept or encircle. Everything was done calmly, without haste, as rushing could alert predators or make prey wary. Each member understood that hunting success depended on the harmony between human movement and the natural patterns of the hunted animals. This was a subtle form of survival art, combining experience, intuition, and keen observational skills. Tension with predators nearby was balanced with an internal calm characteristic of the group. They learned to suppress panic, control their breathing, and maintain focus, knowing that any spontaneous reaction could be fatal. Older children observed, learning to mimic silent movements and read the situation, while younger ones remained safe in the center, protected by more experienced members. These skills formed an intuitive foundation that allowed the group to survive even with large predators lurking at unseen distances. Additionally, coordination and strategy built a deep sense of solidarity. Every individual knew their safety was interconnected. And the success or failure of a hunt was not only a personal matter, but a collective one. Nonverbal communication and movement adjustments became part of ongoing learning, fostering trust and attachment within the group. In this way, dangerous situations were not only physical tests, but also emotional, social, and intellectual exercises shaping the character and survival abilities of early humans. As the hunt progressed, the group combined experience, observations of nature, and instincts honed over years. Their movements remained calm, slow, and deliberate, maximizing chances of success while minimizing risk. Every step, every decision became part of a subtle symphony between humans, prey, and predators. In this rhythm, early humans found a balance between courage, vigilance, and deep awareness of a constantly changing environment, forming an understanding of life that could not always be predicted, but always had to be respected. As prey began showing signs of panic, the early human group had to respond quickly, yet remain calm, balancing between pursuit and avoiding danger. Frightened animals moved unpredictably, leaping and changing direction, forcing hunters to adjust strategies instantly. In this situation, coordination became crucial. Group members read each other's movements, adjusted positions, and maintained safe distances from predators who might exploit the chaos. Every step had to be calculated, as the smallest mistake could trigger disaster. Sudden movements of prey also triggered predator responses. Cave lions or dire wolves lurking nearby could take advantage of the panic to attack, and the group had to assess risk in real time. Retreat strategies or distraction tactics were sometimes applied while maintaining routes to capture prey. Tension increased, but panic did not set in. Each member used experience and instinct to assess the situation and determine the best course of action. Silence, patience, and concentration became the primary tools to maintain balance between danger and success. Older children watched and learned in this environment, understanding the importance of reading signs from nature and predator-prey interactions. They learned that panic is the greatest enemy and that measured movements could save lives. Younger children remained in the center of the group, protected by more experienced members. Through this observation, collective knowledge about animal behavior, terrain, and group strategy was naturally transmitted, becoming part of continuously developing learning. This situation also emphasized flexibility in strategy. Sometimes previously planned paths were no longer safe, and quick decisions had to be made to reposition the group optimally. Experienced members took initiative, indicated new directions, and gave signals to help the entire group adjust. This process required highly subtle nonverbal communication, full trust among members, and the ability to read situations quickly without causing confusion. The tension that arose was not only physical, but also emotional. Awareness that predators and prey could change behavior in an instant fostered respect for a fragile and unpredictable life. Internal calm became an important mechanism, allowing decisions to be made thoughtfully even under pressure and uncertainty. This experience shaped a mindset combining instinct, experience, and social intelligence, equipping early humans with complex yet natural survival skills. Success in this situation brought a deep sense of relief, but remained accompanied by vigilance. They understood that every interaction with nature carried real risks, and that every victory had to be appreciated without diminishing awareness of ever-present danger. Failures or even small mistakes became valuable lessons, enhancing caution and precision in facing future situations. In this way, daily experiences became natural learning modules, shaping survival ability, emotional resilience, and highly developed intuition. In these moments of tension, early humans also built stronger group bonds. Solidarity was visible not only in the division of tasks and food, but also in the trust emerging from shared experiences facing danger. Every action, movement, and decision became part of a harmonious group rhythm, where awareness of the environment, predators, and prey merged into a collective experience that strengthened survival skills and social identity. As prey was eventually captured or predators retreated, tension slowly eased. The silence following the hunt became a time for reflection and evaluation, even without verbal communication. Each member absorbed lessons about animal behavior, positioning, and decisions made, preparing for the next opportunity. In this calm awareness, they learned that every event in nature is a valuable life lesson, and that survival depends on harmony with the rhythms of nature, predators, and ever-changing prey. After prey was successfully captured and predators had retreated, early humans began to utilize the hunting yield carefully and consciously. The meat obtained was distributed proportionally according to need, ensuring every member received enough nutrition to survive. This process was not merely about eating, but also a deeply social form of learning. Elders demonstrated how to cut, process, and store meat while teaching children the importance of efficiency, caution, and understanding of limited resources. In this distribution, solidarity became evident as each individual recognized that survival depended on a balance between giving and receiving. Beyond the physical distribution, this moment was also rich with simple rituals. They did not speak in long words, but gestures, body postures, and subtle movements expressed gratitude toward the prey and the natural world providing food. There was a quiet awareness that every fallen animal was not merely a source of nutrition, but part of a broader life cycle. Children learned from this behavior, understanding that every action carried responsibility, and that respecting the lives of other creatures was part of wisdom, passed down through generations. The process of food preparation also provided technical learning. They learned to separate edible parts from inedible ones, preserve reserves for the future, and prevent meat from spoiling quickly. Every step was performed calmly, attentively, and with awareness of the importance of maintaining resources for longevity. These activities honed observational skills, patience, and precision, making each individual more prepared for future challenges. Additionally, post-hunt moments strengthened social bonds. They sat together, shared food, and observed one another's interactions with gentle attention. Children watched how adults responded to the hunting results, how they valued the prey, and how decisions about distribution were made according to need. In this atmosphere, social knowledge, strategy, and group norms were naturally embedded, becoming part of the collective understanding that continuously evolved. The acquired food also became a basis for long-term survival strategies. They realized resources were limited, and that today's hunt needed to be prepared for tomorrow's needs. Meat reserves and leftover prey became tools for learning resource management, setting priorities, and anticipating shortages. This awareness fostered cautious and proactive thinking, teaching that survival depended on careful planning and wise management. These simple rituals, though seemingly trivial to modern observers, held profound meaning for early humans. Every gesture, signal, and posture contained messages of respect, responsibility, and understanding of the environment. Children witnessing these rituals absorbed lessons on morality, gratitude, and the value of life without the need for long words. This was a natural way to instill wisdom, shape character, and build foundational social awareness. As the day progressed, post-hunt moments became times of reflection. They assessed successes, analyzed mistakes, and devised strategies for the next hunt. Every experience was material for learning, not only in hunting skills, but also in social interaction, task division, and deep understanding of nature. In this way, early humans developed complex survival capabilities that harmoniously combined technical knowledge, emotional awareness, and social strategy, ensuring that future generations could continue life with greater understanding and wisdom. As the sun gradually lowered its light and night began to envelop the land, early humans focused on preparing their shelters. Large trees, boulders, and small cliffs became key points to protect themselves from cold and nocturnal predators. They gathered dry leaves, twigs, and other natural materials to make a sleeping area that was sufficiently comfortable and safe. This activity was carried out in a calm rhythm, with full attention and without haste, because night brought real dangers, but also opportunities to rest, regenerate energy, and reflect on the day that had passed. Preparing the sleeping area was not only physical, but also social and ritualistic. Every member understood the sequence of steps to be taken, from securing the location, arranging sleeping materials, to ensuring that a fire or light source was safe from risk. Children learned by imitation, absorbing subtle habits and observing adults' attention to environmental details. In this way, practical skills and awareness of safety were naturally transmitted, forming a strong foundation for survival and harmonious interaction with nature. Nighttime also became a period of quiet reflection. Sounds of nature, the wind blowing, snapping twigs, and distant predator calls created a rhythm received with full awareness. Early humans learned to read signs from nature, assessing whether the environment was safe or required additional measures. This silence was not merely an absence of sound, but a moment of full attention that honed observation, intuition, and environmental understanding. Every movement, even the smallest, was carefully considered to minimize risk. Simple pre-sleep rituals became part of their daily routine. There were no long words or complex symbols, but subtle gestures and actions marked respect for nature and gratitude for food, safety, and shelter. Sometimes, members sat around a small fire, allowing its heat and light to ward off darkness, while observing shadows moving on cliff walls or through trees. Children absorbed this atmosphere, understanding the value of group warmth, safety, and attention to environmental details. Night preparations also involve protective strategies. Experienced members took strategic positions, guarding potential predator entry points and ensuring all members remained within supervision. They used light and sound cautiously, avoiding attracting predators, while still providing a sense of security for the group. Sensitivity to the night environment became an essential skill, teaching early humans to interpret every change in light, sound, and scent around them. Beyond the practical aspects, nighttime offered emotional and social learning. Children learned calmness, patience, and discipline through observation and participation in nightly routines. They understood that life depended on caution, environmental awareness, and collective cooperation. Simple rituals, sleeping preparations, and security strategies formed a profound foundation of knowledge about life, respect for nature, and social responsibility. As night grew darker, early humans discovered a rhythm connecting them with nature. Silence became a companion, shadows a teacher, and the sounds of the natural world indicators of their surroundings. They slept with the awareness that each day brought new challenges, that life was always fragile, but also full of lessons derived from daily experiences. In this calm atmosphere, they felt gentle peace while allowing curiosity to persist about the world beyond the firelight. Maintaining a balance between tranquility and vigilance, between rest and awareness. The dark night was never truly silent, for as the last sunlight vanished beyond the horizon, other forms of life began to emerge. From afar came the long howl of a prehistoric wolf, answered by faint echoes from its distant pack. That sound drifted slowly through the air, across the forest, over frozen plains, until it reached the ears of early humans gathered around their small fire. They were not startled, not panicked, but listened quietly, as if the howl were simply a natural rhythm of the night they had long known. The predator's call was not only a warning of danger, but also a sign that life continued beyond the circle of their firelight. From the dark thickets came the scraping of branches, the dragging of heavy steps, or the loud breath of something breaking through the cold air. No one could be sure whether it was a passing bison, a cave bear searching for food, or merely the night wind playing with dry trees. The early humans gazed toward the source without speaking, allowing the silence to provide its own uncertain answer. They knew not every question required an immediate response. Sometimes it was enough simply to listen, to sense, and to remain calm. Children lying near the fire often stared up at the star-filled sky, trying to find shapes among the flickering lights above. They did not yet know the concept of constellations, but their imagination formed stories, images of large animals or traces of ancestors that seemed to march across the heavens. For them, the night was not only fear, but also a vast stage where an unseen world slowly revealed itself. Adults allowed the children to enjoy this view, understanding that curiosity was as vital a lesson as vigilance. Occasionally, the call of a night bird broke the quiet, its wings flapping low between trees, producing strange yet rhythmic sounds. On the ground, insects or small creatures made delicate rustling noises, like faint chimes that accompanied the night. For early humans, all of this was not noise, but layers of signs to be read. Every sound carried meaning, whether as warning, guidance, or simply affirmation that other life pulsed nearby. The fire served as a clear boundary between the human world and the darkness beyond. Moving shadows on cliffs or tree trunks often appeared like figures, as if something were watching from the dark. Yet they were in no hurry to interpret, for calmness was more valuable than panic. They simply sat, gazing at the fire, feeling its warmth, occasionally adding small twigs to keep the flame alive until dawn. In the silence, they understood that night was a time when the line between reality and imagination grew thin. The rhythm of the group's breathing merged with that of the natural world. Those who stood watch remained alert, listening carefully, weighing every change of sound. Sometimes a large animal passed by, its shadow faint, visible only briefly before vanishing into the dark. Yet there were no shouts, no flight, only the awareness that the world beyond the circle of fire remained vast and full of secrets. They accepted the presence of other beings with composure, as if long reconciled with the fact that humans were but a small part of the great web of nocturnal life. As time passed, drowsiness took over. Some curled up on beds of dry leaves, while others kept their eyes open, gazing at the slowly turning sky with its scattered starlight. They knew that when dawn arrived, a new day would bring unexpected challenges, but night offered a space to surrender to weariness. In that darkness, the calls of predators, the rustling leaves, and the crackling of a small fire became a lullaby. An ancient music that had accompanied humanity since the very beginning of its existence. At times, the quiet night transformed into something heavier, when the sound of heavy steps drew closer. Branches snapped, the slow thud of weight pressed against the frozen ground, and the long exhale of breath that clearly did not belong to humans. In the darkness beyond the firelight, something massive moved with patience. It did not run, it did not attack, it merely walked slowly as if observing. Perhaps it was a cave lion, its muscular frame and faintly glowing eyes catching the moonlight. Or perhaps a giant bear, searching for scraps of food left behind by humans. No one could be certain, for the shadows revealed only indistinct shapes, silhouettes that deceived the eyes. The early humans did not react rashly. They were accustomed to the presence of such giants around them. There were no shouts, no frantic movements, only silence steeped in vigilance. A few more twigs were added to the fire, its glow strengthened. And they remained seated, keeping their breathing steady so as not to spark further curiosity from the nocturnal watcher. In such a world, composure was a weapon as essential as the spear or the flame. They knew predators could sense fear, could detect unease, so they chose silence, choosing instead to become part of the night stillness itself. Sometimes the predator merely passed by, casting a glance before continuing on its path. The next morning, great paw prints left in the snow served as proof that the brief encounter had truly happened. Yet there were times when the animal lingered, settling on the edge of the dark, watching with faintly shining eyes. Two worlds met, humans and predator, divided only by the fragile flame flickering in the cold. No one moved, no one dared approach. Only a long gaze stretching across the boundary of light. For early humans, such moments may have been their earliest lessons in respect. They did not view predators as absolute enemies, but as part of a larger balance. A hungry cave lion could be a deadly threat, but in the stillness of night, it also stood as a symbol of power older than humanity itself. It is possible that the silent gaze exchanged between predator and human was once interpreted as a form of communication, a sign that both acknowledged each other's presence without needing to erase it. That tension was not terror, but awareness of a fragile boundary. Humans sat within their circle of fire. Great beasts lingered beyond, and between them stretched an unspoken space of silence. That space may well have become part of the heritage that later gave rise to stories, myths, and symbols within human culture. For from the beginning, humanity lived alongside fear. And from fear came respect, which gradually transformed into knowledge passed down through generations. The night moved on. The predator eventually departed, leaving only faint tracks in the snow and memories etched into the hearts of those who witnessed. There was no attack, no blood, only a fleeting meeting at the edge of darkness. Yet it was precisely within that voiceless encounter that one of the most essential aspects of humanity's relationship with nature was shaped. A relationship that still lingers, even though those great predators have long since vanished from our world. When dawn came and great tracks remained pressed into the snow, early humans often sat in silence, observing them with curiosity mingled with reverence. The footprints of a predator were not merely evidence that an animal had passed by, but also an unwritten message. They studied the depth of the impressions, the breadth of the paws, the direction of the steps, and from there they imagined the giant figure that had moved through the night. From this process, stories were born, stories not told simply for entertainment, but to teach caution and respect to their children. Each footprint became a letter in the language of nature, and humans learned to read the sentences formed by them with care. The tales born from those nighttime encounters gradually became symbols. A cave lion was not only an animal, but the shadow of power, of threat, and also of balance. A great wolf was not only a predator, but a symbol of cunning and of loyalty within the pack. A cave bear was not merely a hulking beast, but an embodiment of patience and strength that lurked in the dark. These symbols were never expressed in written language, but conveyed through images painted on cave walls, carvings etched into bone, or stories repeated around the firelight. In ancient caves, we can still see the handprints of early humans pressed against stone, as if they wished to leave a mark to say they had witnessed that world. Beside the handprints are images of great animals, drawn with simple lines yet filled with meaning. A bison with curved horns, a mammoth with immense tusks, a cave lion shown mid-chase. These depictions were not only records of the hunt, but also inner reflections, expressions of awe and unease toward the beings with whom they shared the world. For the children who heard these tales, the world grew larger than what they could see with their own eyes. They learned that there were forces that could not be conquered by brute strength alone, but must be met with cleverness, patience, and silent prayers to something greater than themselves. Perhaps those prayers were never spoken in words, but expressed through stillness. Through the way they gazed into the fire, through the way they carved animals into stone. There lies the beginning of mythology, when lived experience and imagination blended together, creating layers of meaning that endured even as the great beasts themselves disappeared. In this way, early humans made predators part of themselves. They did not view the great beasts solely as threats, but also as silent teachers. From predators, they learned to read the signs of the natural world. From silent encounters, they learned the meaning of patience. From the footprints left in snow, they learned that life always leaves messages that must be read with care. All of this became part of a legacy that never truly vanished. For even now, humans carry within them a sense of awe mixed with fear toward the dark, toward shadows, toward that which is greater than themselves. As nights grew longer and the campfire became the only light holding back the dark, early humans began to connect the presence of great predators with something more than flesh and bone. The cave lion they glimpsed was not only an animal, but the shadow of a spirit watching from within the forest. The great wolf that howled in the distance was not merely a threat, but a voice from the unseen world delivering a warning. The cave bear disappearing into darkness was not only a living beast, but the guardian of a threshold that separated the human realm from the spirit world. This connection was born from repeated experiences, from uncertainty, from fear mingled with awe that could never truly be explained in words. Simple rituals began to emerge. Before setting out to hunt, they scattered ash upon the ground or placed small stones in a pile as a plea for protection. Before eating the flesh of an animal, they burned a small piece, letting the smoke rise into the air as if it were an offering to something greater. When someone dreamed of a lion, the group listened with seriousness, for dreams were seen as messages, not merely shadows of sleep. Great predators slowly became bridges between the visible and the invisible, between fragile human life and the mysterious powers that maintained balance. In certain caves, predator bones were carefully gathered. The skull of a bear might be placed in a separate spot, as if it were sacred. The tooth of a lion was worn as an amulet, hung around the neck, not merely to display courage, but to guard the wearer's spirit against the wild forces outside the fire's circle. Even a claw or tuft of fur found in the wilderness became part of a tale, passed down from one generation to the next, as though it carried a fragment of the animal's breath. All of this was done in silence, without scriptures, without written laws, only with feelings passed from eye to eye, from hand to hand, from heart to heart. Children raised in such an atmosphere did not only hear tales of hunting and survival, but also stories of spirits dwelling in predator bodies. They were taught to respect footprints, not to tread carelessly on bones found in the forest, to whisper gently when passing caves thought to be the dens of great bears. They learned that life was not only about full stomachs or enduring fires, but also about maintaining balance with forces unseen yet deeply felt. There lay the roots of human spirituality, simple yet profound. From this connection, something close to myth emerged. The cave lion became a guardian spirit of the sky, the giant wolf, a messenger between worlds, the cave bear a keeper of the deep earth. None of this was ever written down, yet it lived in repeated stories, in small dances before the hunt, in the way they gazed at the moon on long nights. The great predators once feared, now were also invoked in prayers, remembered in rituals, honored as part of the circle of life. In this way, even after vanishing from the physical world, the great beasts lived on in the inner world of humankind, shadows that never disappeared from human memory. When the great predators truly began to vanish from the Earth's landscape, early humans felt something difficult to describe. They did not only lose enemies or rivals, but also a part of the mirror that for thousands of years had shaped their fear and reverence. The cave lion, once glimpsed in the distance, now lived only in stories. The great wolf that once howled through the night now left behind only silence. The cave bear, once the guardian of darkness, now was only bones buried deep within frozen soil. For humans, their disappearance was not merely news of diminished danger, but a sign that the world itself was changing, that the old rhythm they had long known was slowly fading. In rituals, this absence became increasingly real. People still placed stones, still lit small fires as offerings, but the spirits they once invoked felt more distant. No longer did a roar echo back from the valley. No longer were great tracks discovered by the riverbank to quicken the heart. Children born afterward only heard tales from their elders, never experiencing the real terror of facing yellow eyes glowing in the forest night. With time, myth grew stronger than reality. The great predators lived on in imagination, in repeated tales, in dreams mingled with memories of the past. Yet for some, that absence created emptiness. Nights felt quieter, the hunt lighter, but also emptier. They realized that both enemy and teacher had gone. No longer were they reminded of the fragility of life by a distant howl. No longer were they forced to remain humble under the shadow of immense strength. A quieter world brought with it a strange longing, as if humanity had lost something that once kept a safe distance between themselves and pride. The extinction of the great predators altered not only ecology, but also the spiritual core of humans, creating a hollow space that no other animal could truly fill. In caves, the remaining bones became ever more important. The skull of a bear, once merely a symbol of protection, now was a relic of a vanished world. The lion's tooth, once worn as an amulet, was passed down like treasure, not for its real power, but because it was the final doorway to the memory of beings that would never return. Old tales were told with a melancholy tone. No longer warnings of danger, but bedtime stories, so children would know that once there were great creatures who lived alongside humans, creatures that now existed only in memory. The loss of the great predators also slowly changed how humans viewed themselves. No longer did they feel as a small part of a greater circle guarded by animal spirits, but rather they began to see themselves as those standing at the peak. A position that at first felt triumphant, yet in time also carried weight, for no great force remained to balance them. The world grew quieter, calmer, but emptier as well. And in that emptiness, new myths were born, new prayers were spoken. And a longing for what was lost lingered, a longing that perhaps still echoes in the human mind even now. As time passed, when the shadows of great predators truly disappeared from forests and grasslands, humans did not stop seeking them. They recreated those figures in stories, painted them on cave walls, carved them into bone, and wove them into night dances. The cave lion that was once real became a spirit with a fiery mane running across the evening sky. The great wolf that once howled now appeared in dreams as a guardian of the spirit's journey. The cave bear that once dwelt in darkness was invoked in prayers as a protector of the earth. These were not mere fantasies, but attempts to preserve balance so the world would not feel empty, so that absence could be filled with symbolic presence. Within communities, new myths bound people more closely together. Children were raised with tales that the lion spirit guarded the sun, ensuring it rose every morning. Hunters believed a spectral wolf accompanied them, tracking their path home, so they would not be lost in the forest. Women with child prayed to the spirit of the bear so their children would be born strong like the claws that once scarred stone. Myth gave comfort, gave direction, and replaced the predator's voices no longer heard on the earth. In the lengthening silence, story became song. Song became prayer, and prayer became the foundation of daily life. At times, humans invented new beings, hybrids of old predators and imagination. There were tales of winged lions crossing the sky, wolves with eyes of fire guarding the gates of night, or bears so vast their bodies merged with mountains. They knew such creatures had never existed, but within them was preserved the longing for the great beasts that were gone. In this way, humans learned that although the world changed, memory could create new worlds. Memory could reweave fear, reverence, and awe into something still alive, even if it no longer walked upon the earth. As generations turned, the stories drifted further from reality. Children no longer knew that cave lions had once been flesh, that great wolves had left tracks that could be followed, that cave bears had truly slept in stone dens. To them, all were spirits, gods, or guardians. The extinction of great predators had been replaced by the birth of a symbolic world, richer, broader, freer. A world no longer limited by the presence of animals, but shaped by the imagination of humans. Yet behind it all remained a faint thread, linking ancient reality to the myths born after. A thread reminding that every legend, however far from truth, has its roots in something that once was real. Thus, the great predators may have vanished from the earth, but they lived on in other forms and spirits invoked, in myths retold, in symbols passed down. Humanity may have lost roars and howls, but they gained a new language, one capable of uniting fear, longing, and the desire to understand the world. And perhaps, even now, those shadows linger in folklore, in animal symbols upon banners, crests, or dreams. For thousands of years ago, humanity learned one simple lesson: that loss never truly means disappearance, but transformation into something else. Now we can imagine the world during that transition. A world where the great predators were gone, yet their shadows still lingered in the air. Forests felt quieter, grasslands more open. Rivers flowed without giant tracks pressed along their banks. But the humans who walked upon that land did not walk alone, for within their minds, the cave lion, the great wolf, and the ancient bear still lived, as if their spirits followed from afar. The physical absence had shifted into symbolic presence, and that presence was just as powerful, perhaps deeper, because now it lived within the human inner world rather than only in the outer one. Daily life continued, hunts still carried on, fires still tended, caves still inhabited. Yet behind these activities, a new awareness slowly grew. humans began to see themselves as beings capable of creating a second world, one born of stories, symbols, and imagination. This world no longer merely reflected reality, but interpreted it, altered it, and completed it. Here lay the earliest seeds of what we would later call culture, religion, and mythology. All began with loss, with the emptiness left by the great predators, then filled with words, songs, images, and prayers. For those who lived in that time, there may have been no word to describe this transition. They simply felt it. Nights were quieter, but also heavier with meaning. The shadow of animals no longer alive still appeared in dreams, and those dreams guided their steps. In the lengthened silence, humans discovered a new voice, a voice from within, telling them that the world was not only made of what could be seen and touched, but also of what could be felt and imagined. Thus, the extinction of the great predators was not an end, but a doorway to another beginning. A beginning of a broader inner world. One where extinct animals still lived in symbols and myths. One where humans learned that reality could always be expanded by imagination. Life went on, generations turned, and the stories of the great predators spread like seeds growing in new soil. A legacy not only about animals that once existed, but also about how humans responded to loss. How they created meaning from emptiness, and how from silence a new world was born, one that could never truly go extinct. If we sit quietly at the mouth of a cave once inhabited by humans thousands of years ago, then close our eyes and let the night wind brush across our face, we may feel something subtler than mere silence, as if a faint echo remains not the sound of real animals, but their shadows, a whisper not heard by the ear, but rising from the innermost layers of the mind. That echo carries the impression that the great predators never truly left. They merely changed form, becoming part of an unseen realm that still surrounds humanity. Like spirits without bodies, they drift among trees, follow rivers, hide behind stones, present though invisible, yet still perceptible to a quiet heart. The ancient humans may never have separated the real world from the spirit world. For them, both were layers of one whole. When the cave lion disappeared from the plains, they believed it still dwelled within the earth, within the sky, or within dreams. When the giant wolf no longer stalked the herds of deer, they were certain its spirit still guarded the balance between life and death. And when the ancient bear no longer grunted before the caves, they saw that silence not as an end, but as proof the creature had become guardian of another world. Through such beliefs, humans discovered ways to coexist with loss, turning it into a bridge toward new understanding, rather than a chasm that swallowed hope. We, living now, may call it mythology, or belief, or mere fantasy. But if we look more deeply, we will see that this mysterious layer is a mirror of human longing. A longing not to lose completely, a longing to remain connected with a world larger than themselves. Each time a fire was lit, it was not only for warmth, but also to call forth light so that wandering spirits might draw near without causing fear. Each time an animal was painted on the cave wall, it was not merely drawing, but an attempt to rebind the connection with what had been lost, to keep it present, to keep it remembered, to keep it protective. And perhaps, if we sit long enough in those places, allowing the heart to become still, we too might hear that same echo. Not in the form of a roar, not in the form of a howl, but in a faint vibration whispering that history is not merely a collection of facts, but also layers of the unseen that cannot be measured or explained. The great predators may have gone extinct, but within human consciousness. They remain eternal, and that eternity is a mystery still pulsing beneath the surface of time. The shadows of vanished predators often reappear, not in the open plains, but within the world of human dreams. For thousands of years, dreams have been regarded as the meeting ground between the living and the departed. In dreams, ancient humans may once again have heard the roar of the cave lion vibrating through the air, seen the glowing eyes of the giant wolf piercing the darkness, or felt the warm, heavy breath of the ancient bear upon their neck. To them, dreams were not merely fleeting illusions, but messages that needed interpretation. Some dreams were seen as warnings, some as callings, and some as bridges to deeper wisdom. Perhaps on cold nights, when the fire had shrunk to glowing embers, hunters slept with their heads resting against stone, and in their dreams they were led into vast, endless plains. There, they saw herds of ancient animals walking slowly, with great predators trailing from afar. There was no fear, only awareness that the cycle of life and death continued without pause. From such dreams, humans learned the meaning of existence, that they were only a small part of a circle far greater than their daily hunt. At times, those dreams also turned into something pressing. An elder might awaken in cold sweat, because in his sleep he had heard a long, piercing howl that cut through the bones. He did not see any form, yet the sound was enough to shake his spirit. For ancient communities, this could signify that hard seasons lay ahead, or that the spirits of the ancestors were speaking through the form of predators long gone. The interpretation of dreams became a vital part of their lives, for through such interpretations, they found reasons to remain strong, cautious, and attuned to the mysterious rhythms of nature. On the other hand, dreams could also be places where humans felt protected by the creatures now extinct. Imagine a small child trembling inside a cave, and in his sleep he dreams of an ancient bear lying beside him, offering warmth and safety. For that child, the bear was not a threat, but a guardian. From such small tales emerged the belief that great predators carried to faces one fearsome and one protective, depending on how humans opened their hearts to them. Today, we may no longer interpret dreams in the same way. Yet still, the images of those ancient animals appear within our collective consciousness. They live on in stories, in legends, even in scientific imagination, attempting to reconstruct the vanished world. On a deeper layer of the mind, we still dream of them, as though their spirits continue seeking a place to live among us. And perhaps, without realizing it, those dreams are the final bridge connecting us to predators that have vanished. Proof that though their bodies are buried in ice and soil, their shadows continue walking within our thoughts. In many ancient caves discovered across Europe and Asia, stone walls still preserve faint paintings of massive animals that no longer exist. Cave lions, giant wolves, ancient bears, even creatures difficult to identify, appear in the simple lines drawn by human hands thousands of years ago. These paintings were not merely art in the sense we understand today. but part of ritual way of communing with the spirit world. Ancient humans believed that by drawing the creatures they feared, they were not only preserving their image, but also summoning their spiritual power. Each line upon the wall was a prayer, each symbol a petition, and each streak of red or black made from earth or charcoal a binding link between the human world and the unseen. Such rituals were often performed in silence, deep within caves where firelight flickered weakly upon stone surfaces. Hunters may have sat in a circle while an elder began to paint, his hand trembling yet guided, as though following an invisible whisper. At that moment, the cave was no longer an empty hollow, but a sacred chamber where the spirit of the beast was called, listened to, and revered. In that silence, the drip of water from the ceiling and the crackle of small fire could be heard, and between those sounds was the conviction that the vanished predator was present again, not in flesh, but in spirit, drifting among the people. Beyond painting, ancient humans also performed rituals using bones and skulls of great animals. At several sites, arrangements of cave bear skulls were discovered, deliberately placed in patterns as though forming altars. Such skulls may have been seen as bridges between the living world and the spiritual, as doors connecting humans with powers greater than themselves. By setting skulls within caves, humans seemed to say that even though the animal's body was gone, its spirit could still be spoken to, still grant protection, or perhaps still required appeasement lest it bring misfortune. These rituals reveal that humans did not view great predators only as threats or enemies. They saw them as part of the life web that must be respected. By painting them, arranging their bones, and calling their names in prayer, humans affirmed that their relationship with those animals was deeper than the dynamic of hunter and hunted. It was spiritual, cosmic, transcending life and death. And even today, as we stand within those dark caves, gazing at the faded drawings that remain, we may feel the same, as if we are being drawn into that ancient ritual, realizing that the mystery of prehistoric predators was never lost, merely hidden within the deepest layers of human consciousness. When the great predators vanished from plains and forests, their bodies may have been buried in ice or soil, yet their shadows endured within the symbols humans created. In many cultures, ancient beasts never truly disappeared, but transformed into emblems of strength, fear, and protection. The cave lion, for instance, was in some ancient traditions envisioned as the guardian of the underworld's gate, a being that tested the courage of the soul before crossing into the afterlife. The giant wolf often appeared as an ambiguous figure, sometimes as the lurking enemy in the darkness, sometimes as the protector showing the way. The ancient bear became a symbol of the earth's power, its massive and heavy body seen as the embodiment of solid ground, and as a reminder that strength can soothe as well as destroy. Ancient mythologies from around the world preserve faint traces of predators that may have already been extinct when the tales were told. Stories speak of fur-covered monsters with long fangs rising from snow, of beasts that guarded caves but never showed themselves in daylight, appearing only in the dreams of elders. All of this may stem from the collective memory of Ice Age megafauna. That memory was not passed on only through words, but also through symbols, rituals, and layered beliefs. Thus, Even though the predators no longer roamed in reality, their shadows continue to shape how humans perceive the world. The symbolism of great predators also appears in objects that were handed down. Small ivory figurines found in caves, for example, depict massive animals in sharp detail, as if their makers sought to ensure those forms would never vanish from memory. Carvings on bone, patterns on pottery. Even stones arranged in deliberate ways may be read as attempts to hold on to the predator's presence among humans. Such objects may look simple, yet to those who crafted them, they were bindings between past and present, between the visible world and the realm of spirit. Even today, that symbolism persists, though in altered forms. We still use lions as emblems of courage, wolves as symbols of loyalty or cunning, and bears as representations of strength. Perhaps without realizing it, we are repeating patterns established thousands of years ago, patterns in which humans not only lived alongside animals, but placed them at the center of collective awareness as mirrors of traits they admired and feared. Ice Age predators may be gone, yet their spirits still glow within the symbols we carry. And in their silence, those symbols continue to hold mysteries that can never be fully resolved. When humans no longer face the great predators directly, their presence gradually shifted from the physical realm into the inner one. The massive beasts that once stirred fear now took residence within dreams, becoming archetypes that reappeared again and again in human stories, legends, and imagination. In the language of depth psychology, the cave lion, the giant wolf, or the ancient bear can be seen as shadows of humanity's deepest fears, shadows that did not merely represent external threats, but also mirrored the darker sides dwelling within. Ancient dream traditions often spoke of humans being chased by colossal beasts, or standing at the mouth of a cave while roars echoed from within. The cave could be read as the inner chamber of the psyche, a place where mysteries and fears are hidden, while the predator inside symbolized the untamed force that could never be fully subdued. In this way, ancient predators transformed into symbols of something greater than animals themselves. They became embodiments of inherited fear, ancestral awe carried down through generations. It is no surprise, then, that so many folk tales placed great beasts as testers or guardians. They did not merely block human journeys, but demanded courage to be confronted. In this sense, ancient predators became hidden teachers, forcing humans to acknowledge their weaknesses, yet also to discover strength within fear. Their once literal shadows now functioned as symbols, urging humanity to recognize its own darkness. Even today, we can feel the echo of this archetype. In films, novels, or modern dreams, we still encounter images of massive creatures with fangs, claws, and glowing eyes in the dark. Though their shapes have changed with time, the essence of the symbol remains: the presence of the ancient predator within the human psyche, as a mirror of the wildness that never truly vanished. They are not only part of Earth's past, but part of the soul's past as well. As time passed, humans began to see ancient predators not only as sources of fear, but also as guardian spirits who moved between the realms of the real and the inner. In ancient spiritual traditions, great beasts often carried dual roles. They could be terrifying enemies, yet also invisible protectors. The giant wolf, for instance, in some myths was seen as a companion of souls, a creature that guided the dead to the other world. Frightening for its power, but comforting because it never abandoned those it escorted. The cave lion was sometimes spoken of as a symbol of the sun's authority, appearing in oral tales as a guardian at the threshold of a broader world, a world filled with both light and mystery. The shadow of these predators within the human psyche can be seen as a double layer intertwined. On one side, they were deep-seated fears, remnants of survival instincts whispering constant caution. On the other side, they were a kind of primal protector, wild spirits guarding the edges of awareness, as if whispering for humans not to step too far beyond lines they were not yet ready to understand. In this way, the presence of ancient predators never truly disappeared, but transformed from threat into reminder, from foe into guardian. In certain cultures, the spirit of the predator was even depicted in rites of passage. Hunters would wear masks or skins of great beasts, dancing around fire, entering states of trance. For them, the predator spirit was not merely a memory of an animal once alive, but a cosmic force still connected to the human world. The crackle of the fire, the shadows dancing on cave walls, the cries that echoed through the night hall became a stage for the presence of the predator spirit. It was frightening, yet it also brought a sense of safety, as though humans instinctively knew that beyond the darkness, something was watching over them. In the end, ancient predators within human consciousness became symbols of balance. They were threats that reminded humans of their limits, yet guardians who guided them toward humility before nature. They embodied the duality, fear and protection, threat and comfort, shadow and light. In the stillness of night, when eyes close and dreams approach, we can sometimes still feel their breath, not as enemies, but as guardian spirits watching over the fragile threshold between sleep and awareness. There is a layer of mystery that can never be fully explained about the ancient predators. They were not merely creatures that lived and then went extinct, but cosmic riddles stretched across time. Their shadows remain in fossils, in cave wall carvings, in myths passed down from generation to generation. Yet all of these only offer small fragments, like shards of a broken mirror that can never be pieced back together. When humans attempt to understand why the cave lion, the dire wolf, or the saber-toothed cat vanished from the earth, the answers always feel incomplete. There are theories of climate shifts, of famine, of human greed, but none truly weave the whole story. The presence of ancient predators in Earth's history often feels like a missing chapter in a book. We know something was written there, something vital, but the page has been torn away and never recovered. Humans can only guess at its contents through the faint shadows that remain. It is there that the mystery grows, not only because of the absence of evidence, but because every attempt to explain leads only to new emptiness. Every discovery adds new questions, and every answer opens a door into deeper mysteries. For some, this mystery sparks an endless curiosity. For others, it provides comfort. For in uncertainty, humans learn to accept that not all things must be understood. Just as night closes the sun with darkness, the disappearance of ancient predators is a curtain closing a long chapter of life on Earth. That curtain cannot be fully drawn back, and perhaps it never should be. There is beauty in a mystery left hanging, in a story that never reaches its conclusion, in secrets left buried with ice, soil, and time. Thus, ancient predators are not simply beings that once lived, but symbols of the limits of human knowledge. They remind us that the earth holds layers of secrets far deeper than the reach of our minds. When we speak of them, we are in truth speaking of ourselves, of our limitations, of our insatiable curiosity, and of the courage to continue walking forward even when the final answers will never be found. And now, after all the long stories have unfolded, we arrive at the edge of the journey, one that remains deliberately open. The ancient predators, the cave lion, the dire wolf, the saber-toothed cat, all are long gone. Yet their shadows still cling to the walls of human imagination. They are spirits that never truly departed, yet never fully returned. In dreams, they sometimes come back, walking slowly across frozen plains, glancing once, then vanishing into endless fog. There are no answers we can hold, no certainty we can grasp, only silence closing slowly, like the curtain of night, like a fairy tale whispered before sleep. The story of the ancient predators is one that asks for no ending. It is left suspended, drifting in the air like a distant star that shines yet cannot be reached. A hush envelops it, as if nature itself wishes to keep the secret intact. All we can do is lie quietly, letting these final words fall gently, becoming a soft lullaby. The mystery remains with us, not to be solved, but to be remembered as part of a greater journey. Perhaps, deep within the earth, behind layers of ice not yet melted, there are traces still unseen. Or perhaps there is nothing at all, only emptiness that lets imagination continue its work. No one knows, and no one needs to know. For it is in uncertainty that we find peace, in secrecy that we learn release, in mystery that we discover a way to fall asleep. Let the ancient predators keep walking in their shadow world, guarding the threshold between reality and dreams, until we ourselves drift into our own long sleep.